Hey guys, this is Doug. I'm here with Brandon.
I'm being belligerent today.
And today we're talking all about our first campaign with Arkham Horror LCG.
Woo!
Hey guys, welcome back to Danger Planet. I'm here with Brandon. Say hello to the internet, Mr.
No,
Brandon.
I refuse.
And today we're doing an episode on Arkham Horror LCG, or more specifically, the Arkham Horror LCG game system. Brandon and I, along with a handful of our good buddies, one of them is actually Rich, who's a good friend of the channel, just actually finished our first full Arkham Horror LCG campaign. And the one that we did was Dunwich Legacy. So in today's episode, Brandon and I are going to walk through effectively our first impressions of the game system. We're going to talk a little bit about how we approached starting our collection. Brandon and I share a collection for the game, basically.
I don't really own any of it. I mean, I bought some, but it's more like you bought it and I organized it, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, you're like the curator, you know?
I'm sort of like a hired museum guy, in museuming the experience in a museum type way.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. You're the curator of the collection, perhaps, then. Anyway, so the episode is going to talk about how we built the collection, how we curated it, and how we navigated our first full playthrough experience. And then we're going to close out the episode talking a little bit about what we're excited for next. So I guess the best place to start at is the beginning. Brandon, since you are I would call you the godfather of Cthulhu and Arkham Horror lore in our friend group, can you give us just a little bit of a background on the history of Arkham Horror LCG, kind of at a very high level for folks that might not be familiar with the game system and kind of where it came from? How old is it? How many editions does it have?
Yeah, I definitely can do that. I will say, I think Sam probably knows more Cthulhu-y things than me, but that's difficult to say. Maybe one day we'll have a Cthulhu off. Suffice to say, so the Arkham Horror LCG is Fantasy Flight Games, which is a company owned by Asmodees. Arkham Horror, like Cthulhu-verse card game. It's a co-op card game. Technically, it's produced by Fantasy Flight. It's designed by Nate French, who I have met. And it is a game that came out in 2016. It's had lots and lots of stuff go on since then. And before that even, it's based on a board game that you probably have heard of called Arkham Horror, which originally came out in the 80s. And that was the first edition. It came out right around the time that the RPG came out. And eventually it sort of moved and then got purchased eventually by Fantasy Flight Games, where they began to add all the characters that are currently in the Arkham Horror living card game and the Arkham Horror board games in Fantasy Flight's second edition of the game. The board game is actually in its third edition now, and it's changed up pretty dramatically. But around the time that the third edition launched, they launched a couple of other games, one of which was this Arkham Horror living card game. Fantasy Flight pioneered the concept of a living card game, which is basically like Magic the Gathering, where they have packs and sets and stuff that come out. But instead of it being randomized, blind packaging, everything comes in a set of cards. So if there's a set of cards, you buy that set and you have everything. There's no randomness to it. It's just finally it's the whole set done, one package. And that's what a living card game is. It's a card game that has episodic releases, but instead of releasing randomness, they release it all in one. You buy it out. And the Arkham Horror card game is a cooperative card game from 1 to 4 players, where the players are playing investigators and scientists and just random people and post-delivery people and magic users and stuff in the 1920s, trying to fight back the threats that are threatening existence and humankind as a whole in the town of Arkham and around Arkham and in different places, in some cases all over the world. But that's what Arkham Horror LCG is. Each player creates a deck that is based around their character, and you work together with the other investigators to try and solve the mystery in an episodic sort of campaign experience. You can play one-shots, you can do a grand campaign type thing, you can make new characters whenever you want, people can die, there can be ramifications, you can gain experience and level up your deck as you go. The game is incredibly robust. There are so many different things happening, and it can be a little bit of a crazy thing to bite off right at the beginning, but very, very cool game. And that's basically Arkham Horror, the LCG. Yeah?
Very good overview, my friend.
Wild.
Now, just for posterity's sake, can you do it twice as fast and backwards, perhaps?
Yes. So that was
Anyway, that really good overview. That's a really good overview. I think the last thing that I want to add, and don't quote me on this because I'm an Arkham Horror LCG noob. I just finished my first campaign, but I believe there's either 8 or 9 primary expansions right now. Right? I'm looking at it now. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think there's 9 primary narrative expansions, of which the Dunwich Legacy is kind of the first expansion that isn't Night of that doesn't come with the core box, right? Because it's Night of the Living Zealot, isn't that the core one?
Yeah, but it's sort of a mini campaign. So almost all the big standalone campaigns are massive, like whole crazy undertakings, and the core box comes with like a 3 game scenario. But the Dunwich Legacy is the first campaign that we just played through.
Yeah, and so I want to talk about really quickly why I was so excited about Arkham Horror LCG, and then I'll give you your moment in the sun to either wax poetic about the system or damn it to hell, Mr. Lane. But
I prefer to wane poetic. Thank you.
Okay, sure, that's fine. Well, so for me, the reason why I was really excited about investing both time and energy in the system is that I saw Arkham Horror as the intersection of a pretty robust board game and card collecting living system smashed together with an RPG element, an ongoing RPG element that was really accessible and something that was designed to be episodic, that I could jump into and out of with a small group of friends at my own pace. And so for me, the Arkham Horror LCG experience is actually kind of my foot back into the role-playing world in a weird way, because I'm usually such a technically driven gamer, and I usually spend so much of my time playing X's and O's strategy games that for me, this element of the role-playing experience and having the log of keeping down all of the events and talking to your friends and making sure that when you read the story narrative, I yell at Brandon to read it in his scary voice.
He does. I can confirm. That happens frequently.
I'm like, no, man, you got to do your scary voice when you read the thing. And then we make sure we have the music. And I really love the RPG element of this type of experience. And that was a huge part of being able to play this game system for me. And so that's why I was really excited about Arkham Horror LCG. I have a feeling that the reason Brandon was willing to pretty much throw his lot in with the system was that Brandon loves the Call of Cthulhu lore, and just general, he loves cosmic horror, which I also love.
Huge
cosmic
fan
horror.
of cock.
So I mean, that's why I was really excited for the system. Brandon, was there any reason why? Because I know you had known about the system for a really long time.
Yeah, I played it at its initial inception a little bit, but I own Arkham Horror, the second edition, the original Fantasy Flight board game, Arkham Horror second edition. I own every single component to it, every single expansion, every upgrade, all of it complete. And we played the hell out of that game. Dan and I, none of you know Dan, Prison Steve, a couple of our other friends. We would play the absolute Brendan. I would make them play it with me for hours and hours and hours in the early 2012 area. So I've always liked Arkham Horror as a premise, and it's fun for me because all of the characters in the Arkham Horror Fantasy Flight universe are all the same. So they add new ones and they remix them and add great characters. But a lot of them I know, and I'm a huge Cthulhu buff. I really like all of the Cthulhu Mythos crap. Even though H.P. Lovecraft was a horrible racist and that guy sucks. Thankfully, Fantasy Flight not as crazy. All of Lovecraft stuff is in the public domain, and he died penniless alone in a gutter, like he should have. So there's this cool remix of this lore, and I played the board game, so it just sort of came all over it. And I think importantly, Doug mentioned the role playing aspect of it. This game has a role playing aspect in the sense that dungeon crawl games have a role playing, Gloomhaven and Frosthaven have a role playing aspect in that you're doing a character, not so much that there's anything in any way imaginative. It's a fully mechanical game, but it's a mechanical game with a great story. and a lot of lore behind it. Not to say that it's like D&D. It's not a role-playing game, but it has this like very, very cool stuff. And what we experienced in specifically this campaign that we just did, the Dunwich Horror Dunwich Legacy campaign, a lot of really awesome tiebacks to some original Lovecraft stories. In this case,
we were the whole time we were going through. You would, because you were like the narrator. You'd always be like, "Oh man!"
I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're on the Sentinel Hill. The fucking Whateleys. Oh my god, it was a powder of Imangazi. Oh my gosh, it was great. I was a huge fan.
Yeah, it was funny. So I mean, I think, and so that was a little bit of my motivation, and this is a little bit of Brandon's motivation. And effectively, what we did is we knew that we wanted to play the game as a group of 4. So Brandon picked a deck. Brandon, what was the name of your?
I was playing Akachi on Yele. I love Akachi. She's such a cool character. She was like one of my favorite characters to play in the Arkham Horror actual board game. And so she was like a fiddly blue control nonsense, like switch, could do anything the way that I built her. And her ability just spoke to me because it was one of those, you don't have an actual, like, it's not like a color build deck. It's, you have this niche mechanic to focus on. And then I was like, cool, now I don't have to read 6,000 cards. I only need to read every card that says the word charge on it. I was like,
and then I was the delivery person, the red survivor that comes in the starter pack. And then we had one deck that was it was played, basically the 2 other decks were played by a bunch of probably 2 or 3 different people over the course of the campaign. But the concept is that we kept all the pips up to date and that we had all of the cards ready to present whoever was playing with us. And we said, listen, you can update your deck or you can change your deck. We don't really care. Here's how many pips you have. Here's where we're at in the campaign. But you should, if you can, please stay within one of these archetypes. And so our team makeup was, Brandon was the purple caster lady. I was the red delivery person, the survivor, who was basically like the support character or the jack of all trades. And then we had a non-denominational blue enforcer deck. It ended up being the cop, most of it, or the well, who's the guy that takes damage from his undead wife?
It's Tommy. I can't remember. I think it's Tommy Mulvaney.
It was the blue enforcer who has the undead wife, where he can take damage to get advantage, but he shouldn't take. If he takes too much damage, it becomes bad for him. That was the guy who showed up most of the time, and then the other deck was most of the time the Indiana Jones clone who had all of the movement tricks baked into it, who was half yellow, half green. And that was the like investigating movement deck. And that was kind of what we did as a team. And I think we had a good experience generally because it was pretty balanced.
Ian's deck was Monterey Jack. I remember that for sure.
Yeah.
But I can't remember I want to say it was Tommy, but
well, the enforcer deck changed a bunch of different times because whoever was playing it often had very specific opinions about how they wanted to kit out their enforcer.
Yeah, so. That's true. It was very cool that it was Tommy Muldoon. It was Tommy Muldoon. Yeah, that's the guy who takes damage from his wife.
For at least the last 3 scenes, it was Tommy. I know that. So anyway, the other thing that I want to talk.
You were playing Stella Clark.
Yeah. Yes. Rain or shine, Stella Clark at your service, sir. So the other thing I want to talk about that was a huge part of how Brandon and I had to wrap our arms around the game system was organizing the game system.
Oh boy.
Which was like Brandon and I had to like sit down and write out a plan to how we were going to actually organize the collection that we were going to use. So if you guys don't know, I mean, the game is 9 story arcs plus the core set plus all 5 color pies cards for characters plus generics plus all investigator cards. How many, if you were to just guess, Brandon, how many total cards do you think, because now we own everything that's printed except for a couple one-offs and we have it all sorted, how many cards do you think we had to sort net total and organize?
Well, I think that probably somewhere in the 6,000 or so range. I think there's quite a few, you know, not gonna lie. And we have almost everything. We don't have all the returns. We don't have some of the stuff that was out of print in terms of like single one shots, and we don't have the books, which I'm not sure how much they actually have. But there's that one character that's not released yet.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But fair to say we have the grand majority of this printed game at this point. Probably 95% of it. Well, maybe at least 90. At least 90.
I may have vastly misestimated. According that doesn't sound right. I searched for stuff that was rogue cards, and it looks like there's 1,100 cards, but that doesn't that there's all kinds of neutral and other stuff. So I don't know.
Suffice to say, it is a ton of cards, and you really
investigator cards. That's what I searched for. There are 1,200 investigator cards, and that's just the cards, and that's not counting any of the cards that are specifically like you know what you use to make the deck out of, the encounter stuff, the story, the scenario, any of the other things. So that's just the cards that you have to deck build from. There are 1,200 cards in the game right now.
So suffice to say, you really need a good plan to organize all this. So the way that we ended up doing it is we have a binder, like a magic card-esque binder, that's color-coded for each of the color pies, and we keep all of our colored investigator cards in each of those binders, and then we have one big giant oversized binder in which we keep all of the investigator cards, all of the gold-colored cards, and all of the neutral faction cards. And so it makes it really easy to, when you want to customize a deck. Oh, and the way that we do our decks is we have 4 boulder cases, like cases that would hold magic card decks, and those cases hold the 4 active investigators for the campaign, of which I'm always one effectively, Brandon is always one effectively, and then we have a stable of friends that kind of tag in and out to play those last 2 slots. One of them is my roommate who plays a ton, and then I've got a bunch of friends from the store, and also Rich from the channel plays a lot. So
and it's also really great to be able to swap people out, I think, for sure. Also, I just searched it on the Arkham DB. It is just shy of 4,000 cards.
So I mean, you got to have a plan in order to manage 4,000 cards effectively. And what Brandon and I found is the difference between setup to play, when you have like a really good organized plan and able to like put out the cards quickly and then take them down and like play, versus having no plan and just having to sort it. It's the difference between taking an hour to set up the game versus, I think, when we got down to our last session, Brandon, how long did it take us to set up from clearing the pizza off the table, the pizza and soda off the table, to when we actually had the table ready? 10 minutes?
It took you longer to get the books because you were doing a bunch of stuff, and I was like, hey, can you get the books? Than it did to actually set up the scenario. Like, it was not long. It was like, I would say it shaved actual setup, like once I really understood the game and its premise and like what to do, half an hour. It shaved half an hour off of it just having some sorting things. And like the boxes with the dividers, what is literally, it's all we did. We have the super fancy boxes that have like 3D printed gold dry brush things on them, but like having the all of the scenario cards, the encounter cards divided by set and then divided by encounter, that is all you need, and that will make it set upable in about 5 minutes. Because you always have to go back to the core set. Every time you set up a scenario, you will need some of the core cards from the encounter sets to build it in every one that I've seen so far. And I don't know that that's every single one, but it seems like it is. So for the love of God, sleeve your cards. You can't play this game unsleeved. It is not okay.
And also a really cheap, effective option for storage for this game is I call them long boys. Brandon, you know what I'm talking about.
The BCW or Ultra Pro, the white cardboard card storage boxes. You can do, if you got top dividers, like top angle dividers, you could easily put this in a 3 or 4 row, couple thousand count box, card box.
Or you can get one long boy per. Or one really long boy per thing.
And the nice thing about the return to scenarios where they've done the go back to the campaign and go through it is they come with a box that will fit all of the cards from it, both the investigator and the encounter cards. The problem is if you do it that way with the investigator cards, deck building is a nightmare.
Yeah.
So
So
strong recommendation of put the deck building cards in binders, like CCG binders. That's where it's at for sure. That made us able to like look through and build decks, especially when we get experience at the end. We want to like add a couple cards. We just sort of, pull a binder by color, flip through, look for what we want, find it, put it in.
and not required, but making it extra fun. You can buy a faux leather fake Necronomicon on Amazon for like $11, and it's really fun to use as your game journal. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool.
It was the best. All right, so we've covered what the game is. We've covered why we wanted to play the game.
Yeah.
We covered how we approached being able to deploy the game.
Mhm.
So, Brandon, you are quite the seasoned veteran in your own time, a seasoned general in your own time, some would say.
Even general in my own time.
Yeah.
On the battlefield with it. Okay. That's all. That's all that I can
No,
think
please.
of it.
I'm never going to stop someone from
before
seeing
the
the general
dispatch
from dispatch.
gets in touch. And
I would never stop you.
yeah.
So, we're good?
No, I'm worried for copyright reasons that we can't sing any more of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the gameplay?
I think it's dumb and you shouldn't buy it. I think it's bad.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I don't want
fairly-
to play it anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Just the
No,
worst game
I
ever.
mean, ultimately, I think that Fantasy Flight, or I've never played the first edition Arkham Horror board game. Fantasy Flight did a very good job of designing the second one, and the living card game is very reminiscent of that. Very, very simply, there are 4 phases. There's a phase where the monsters do things. There's a phase where you do things. And then there's like some setup and cleanup phases in between. And there's a little bit, I think, of getting used to like when everything exactly happens and like when the encounter card goes. But basically, the formula of the original Arkham Horror games is everybody gets to resolve something each turn, right? So somebody it's either on their turn, they'll get to read a card, or somebody will get to read a card. And it really it keeps people engaged, so it's not just like one person sort of masterminding the game, which thankfully we're all gamers as we play in our group, so we haven't had that experience. But I think that they did a very good job of sort of spreading out the stuff. And I think that by far the most success you will have in this game is to have people do sort of different and not overlapping things. You can I had a character where I could either fight or investigate. Doug was like sort of support, but we never had a game where I was like, we had somebody who was doing like the super hard fighting, and then I was like, okay, I'm only going to go fighting too, and we're going to do that. We always sort of spread the load and did the things that we needed to do, and that made it seem like everybody sort of had a thing that they were doing and was interacting and contributing.
And we made sure to talk about everything as a team too.
Yeah, as much as we're allowed to, because there are some like your secrecy rules and stuff. But basically, I think that they designed it very well for that respect. The general premise is simple. You get a resource and a card every turn. Cards cost some number of resources. Some of the cards get stuff on them, and then when you use them, you remove stuff from them, and sometimes they go. But very, very flavorful game design, and they took the encounter stuff where sometimes you'll get rewarded with a new character, or like that you save, or you won't get rewarded if they die. Or you'll get like a cool story element that it doesn't really explain what it is that it does, but at some point you'll learn. Like one of the items that we got later on in the Arkham in the Dunwich Legacy campaign, which I knew what it was because I know Cthulhu lore, but it was very, very cool, and I wasn't really sure how the game would interact with it. But it did an amazing job of describing in the story what it was used as and used for without really explaining game mechanics. And then when the time came, the game mechanics were a perfect match for like lore accurate, like what it did. And I was like, it was very, very good.
Did you find yourself having a Zen nerd moment at that time?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure you know that I did. I mentioned it every time. I was like, oh my God, this is a thing, and just like nerded out for a couple of minutes. And then everyone was like, I think almost every single time, everyone was like, I have no idea what you're saying. And I was like, yeah, it's great.
Yep. Listen, as long as, because you're the cultural historian and cultivator of this cosmic universe that we find ourselves entangled in now. So I don't think anybody was not believing you. We just didn't know what the heck you were talking about.
Yeah,
so.
But unfortunately, the more you know, the more corrupted you are.
Oh, and your sanity, it weighs heavily on the sanity of Brandon Lane as he looked inwardly towards his knowledge. Should he tell his friends, or should he allow them to continue to play their game unimpeded? Is that what was going on in your head, like a narrator like that?
Yeah, pretty much, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think the gameplay was cool. I like it. Brandon is right. I mean, I kind of off the cuff and flippantly described this game as an RPG in my mind because it's so story driven compared to a lot of the other games that I play. But obviously, I'll admit it's not a pen and paper open role playing game. But for me, the thing that I really loved was not having to worry about playing like an objective scoring game and letting myself get totally enthralled in the story. And I was having a lot of fun on the gameplay mechanics of like, I'm just going to go in that room because I don't know what it is. So I want to go exploring. And the ability to kind of like navigate a map. And every time you navigate a map, you reveal a location. And the location generally has like a thing that happens, which can progress the story. And so I was having a ton of fun getting involved in that, especially because I'm new to the Cthulhu mythos. Not like new, like I'm aware generally of the overarching story and Mr. Lovecraft and his universe and the products that have been associated with it for a long time. But I certainly don't know like names of lesser demons and gods and specific characters from stories. Like I don't know that level of detail like you do.
Yeah, and I think, it comes both ways, right? I don't think that you need to know that to have a great time at this game.
Absolutely not. I had a great experience, and I would argue with you that our experiences were really different because for you were like, oh my god, look at all these really cool callbacks and allusions to all this stuff that I really love. And for me, because I was like, I went into it with almost no lore knowledge, just like kind of like a childlike sense of wonderment and excitement that was like, as these things were happening, and I was like, you would read a description of something, I would be like, no way, let me see that card, and it would have this like righteous looking monster on it, and I'd be like, oh my god, that looks awful, and then Ian would be like, oh shit, let me see, and like it would be dope because then we'd be looking at the card, and then you'd be like describing it, and you'd be like, and a tentacled mass. Like, do you remember when? Spoiler alert, if you want to. Spoil section. Boom, boo. When we went into that basement and that writhing flesh mass monster was like chained up, and it was just like this horrible disfigured human that they had been trying to like warp into a monstrous god.
Yeah,
that was wild.
It didn't. I don't think it told us at the time that it was a human until we killed it.
Yeah, until
and
we
exploded and then it. Turned back.
Yeah.
Briefly.
All right. Spoiler warnings off. Warnings off.
All right, the spoiler. It's over.
That's why I thought the gameplay was really cool. That's what I liked about the gameplay, was the ability to have a narratively driven deck builder that had an RPG system and had like obviously kind of a on rails RPG element, but it still allowed me to experience.
Not traditionally a deck builder as a premise. You build a deck for it, but it's not like you don't build a deck during the game. That's not a gameplay element. That's a campaign thing.
Sure, but it's a part of the gameplay.
Yeah. But it's like it's a deck builder in the sense that Magic the Gathering is a deck builder, which it is not.
Yeah, you're saying it's not like the Versus deck builder series or something like that. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's not like Ascension or Dominion or anything like it, but it's very cool to have this I get to build a deck and sort of play in this thing. It's like almost, I would imagine it's sort of what people feel when they play Commander, but like the arch enemy type style where they like play cooperatively, right? It's like cooperative card game. Enough said. But I will say I do think that having that the fundamental knowledge of like the Lovecraft universe and the Cthulhu Mythos and all that stuff was also very cool, because they knock it out of the park on the allusions to little bits of lore and stuff, and especially with a campaign as thematic as the Dunwich Legacy, because the Dunwich Legacy is literally like 5 years after the Dunwich Horror happens, which if you haven't read the Dunwich Horror, it's free online. His works are in the public domain. I strongly recommend you check it out. If you haven't watched it, it's been made into a movie. It wasn't a good movie, but it was a movie technically. There's all kinds of cool bits, but hugely cool lore stuff, and they do such a great job of being lore faithful and writing really interesting plot devices and developments, that I think, having the knowledge or not having the knowledge, it's worth playing either way.
Also, for anyone that's just delving into this, I would highly suggest when you're playing putting on a ambient soundtrack for Cthulhu Mythos world, like background music.
Yeah,
It was awesome.
thankfully, because Lovecraft, because Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu has been a role playing game for like 40 years now. There are so many Call of Cthulhu role playing game soundtracks that you can listen to. Musica Cthulhiana, which I'm not going to spell for you. You just go do your best, man. Tongues, kid, you got 9 of them. That's a funny joke that no one understands unless you're a Cthulhu nerd like me. But you gotta have. You gotta have an awesome background, and if you just search for Call of Cthulhu RPG music soundtrack, you will find infinite creepy
multi-hour long tracks that are like 1, 2, 3 hours a piece, and there's like I found like 50 of them that were pretty good, and we had more than we could use for Dunwich. So
yeah.
All right, well, I mean, I think we did a great job, Mr. Brandon. I guess the last part of this whole scenario is, what are you looking forward to the most for the next part of your Arkham Horror LCG experience?
Yeah, well, I think our next plan is that we're going to start a new campaign, right? So start a new campaign. We have decided, based on some results of our first scenario, that our investigators are going to retire. I don't want to say more than that because I don't want to spoil anything. They did survive. We could play them again, but it would be awful.
It would be difficult.
It would be very, very tricky. Which is also very cool. You can play through multiple campaigns of the same guy, but if every
also
other
for 1
campaign is
second,
like this one, good lord.
We just have to call out. So Brandon and I almost didn't read the epilogue because we got through the whole campaign, and Brandon had to run upstairs to make a video with one of our partners, Boring Conversation, and then he came back down, and so we read the end. So we waited to finish out the scenario, read the end, and then we were packing up, and Brandon and I were both like, I mean, that was fun, but we feel like, maybe there was a little bit more.
What happened after we got back? Like what?
And then I was putting away the information packet, or like the narrative packet. I was putting it away, and I was like, Brandon, there's an epilogue, and he was like, what? And he was like, cue the music. And so like run over, hit play on the current soundtrack we had, and then I clear my throat. I'm like, ah, and then I just reread it, and then Brandon and I, after I finished reading, I put the packet down, and Brandon and I look at each other like, wow, that was dope. Like, holy crap.
Yeah,
glad we found that.
It was so perfectly on point.
Yeah, it wrapped up the whole experience, and it made it really cool. I'm really excited to try another class that isn't just a new class, and I think I'm most excited to see we're gonna do Dream Eater, right? We kind of agree. We're gonna play Dream Eater. Yeah.
I thought we weren't gonna do Dream Eaters because it's a split campaign that requires extra decks. I thought that was a thing that we had discussed. Maybe we'll do Dream Eaters. Maybe we'll do like a different one. If I had a vote, I think for a second plan, maybe the Circle Undone. Technically, Path to Carcosa is next, but that one is.
You could go in order. Listen,
we could just go in order.
We're going to table this for a whole nother episode that will just be an ongoing argument about what we should do next. It's too much involved. All right, say goodbye to the internet, Brandon.
Well, but I thought I was going to talk about another thing before we go.
What did you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, I'm sort of a big fan of the Lovecraft stuff, as we know, and we've for a while we've been talking about doing different things on the channel. So I think it'd be cool if anyone were interested in seeing some like Call of Cthulhu RPG stuff, and I'm not going to say for sure that I've been planning an intricate and detailed and lengthy campaign that we're going to record and put up on the channel very soon, or anything, but that.
Boom, boom. Starting
in a couple weeks, we're going to start recording episodes and post them occasionally, and minor editing where I'm going to be running my first Call of Cthulhu Delta Green campaign for the channel, and it's going to be awesome, and I hope that you will tune in. If role playing content is something that catches your interest, let us know what you want to see below and jump in our Discord. We got all kinds of cool chat about all kinds of cool games. Arkham Horror, role-playing games, the Malifaux, if that's what you're here for. you know, all that sort of stuff. And the overlap between all of the Malifaux people we know and Arkham Horror, the living card game, is wild. Can I just say?
It is uncanny. It is
Yeah.
a little uncanny. All right, cool. Well, catch you next time on the internet.
All right. I'm still being belligerent.
Always. Never stop.